In the 7th year of being with the rich heir, another girl appeared by his side. A friend teased him, asking why he had changed girls. He gave a cold smile. Do I need a reason to keep or discard a woman? Women are single use. Swap them as you like. I turned and walked away, never appearing in his world again. Long after, he cornered me in a changing room, leaving me no way out. A shadow flickered in his eyes. Still not planning to come back? I smiled politely and raised the diamond ring on my ring finger. Sorry, you're too late. Chapter 1. The next time I saw Sam was at a charity auction. I raised my paddle frequently, aiming to bid for the jade bracelet. Just as I was about to win it for 2 million, a cold, lazy male voice interrupted. 10 million. My heart sank suddenly, and I stiffly turned my head to look. The crowd, blurred and shadowy, separated me from him. I only glimpsed the man's rugged profile, his jawline sharp and sculpted, casting faint shadows. The bumps on his neck added a silent, seductive allure within the dim light. It had been 2 years since we last saw each other, and he seemed unchanged. Or perhaps something was different. His lips barely curled into a smile, still lazy and nonchalant, but the air around him made me feel cold and distant. What's Sam's meaning by this? My friend Diana leaned over, her tone displeased. He's deliberately bidding against you, right? I withdrew my gaze indifferently. Not necessarily. Spending 10 million just for fun was a typical thing for Sam, but he clearly knows how important this bracelet is to you. Yes, he knew. I couldn't help but taste a bitterness in my mouth. So what? Bid more. We must fight for it. Diana was upset. No matter how much. Consider it my gift to you. I chuckled softly, a bitter smile forming. Forget it. Sam always got whatever he set his sights on. There was no chance of winning if I competed with him. At the post-auction dinner, a young girl approached me, holding a glass of champagne to greet me. She was as young as a delicate flower, so fresh and beautiful, as if you could squeeze water from her. She looked like I did when I was 20. Even the small tear mole beneath her left eye was identical to mine. She smiled sweetly. Olivia, I've watched your plays all the time. I really like you. And today I finally get to meet you in person. I saw her raise her hand, and on her pale, slender wrist was a lustrous, elegant bracelet. It was the bracelet Sam had just bid for. Noticing my gaze, she blushed slightly. My boyfriend gave it to me. Chapter 2. She deliberately turned her head and pointed to a spot not far away. I followed her gaze, and through the crowd of well-dressed, fragrant people, a distinguished man seemed to sense her attention, and he cast a look toward her. The girl blushed coquettishly, and they exchanged a loving glance across the room. This scene, no matter how I looked at it, felt abrupt. Olivia, I saw you raise your paddle several times. Is this bracelet really that important to you? The girl's bright smile held a trace of apology. I told him to give it to you, but he insisted on giving it to me. I feel so embarrassed. I looked at her with interest but said nothing. She nervously bit her lip. Aren't you disappointed? What does it have to do with you? Diana couldn't hold back. How well do you know Olivia? Flashy bag. She probably didn't expect Diana to be so blunt, and she bit her lower lip, looking quite aggrieved. Sam noticed and his gaze turned dark. I suddenly felt a little suffocated, though I couldn't quite pinpoint the reason why. Your boyfriend is waiting for you, I said, not wanting to explore what was going on in her mind. She didn't say anything else and quickly made her way through the crowd to link arms with Sam. From beginning to end, Sam didn't spare me a single glance. His eyes were fixed on the girl's wrist, and for some reason, he suddenly pushed her hand away. His face was cold as he left the dinner venue. That bastard Sam. Diana gritted her teeth in anger. You've been with him for so many years, and he still hasn't gone public with it. Now he's out here showing off with Julia. He even bid on something you wanted just to please her. This is too much. I sipped my champagne, pushing aside the unsettling thoughts in my mind. Sam had done the same for me before, spending money lavishly just to get a smile from me. So now, if he was doing the same for another girl, it wasn't really that surprising. It's nothing. Bullshit. Diana sneered. Can't you see? Julia is showing off on purpose, trying to disgust you. She's from a small, low-key family with no taste. pretending to be some pure little flower. I finished my drink. Don't get upset. It's not worth it. I'm just mad. After all these years with Sam, he goes and finds a girl who looks just like you to annoy people. He's such a jerk. Chapter 3. In these 2 years, I've managed to remain calm enough, but Diana's words still tore open a wound in my memory. I seem to be standing right in front of that scene from 2 years ago. At that time, after a month-long Cold War with Sam, I had decided to soften my stance. On a winter night with the first snowfall, I left the hospital and purposely went to Sam's private club to find him. Inside, the room was filled with indulgence, and as I opened the door, I overheard someone teasing Sam, "Where's Olivia? How come you've switched women?" Sam was lazily leaning on the couch, with a fresh-faced girl holding a lighter. Her delicate fingers casually brushed against his sharp jawline, seemingly unintentionally, a playful touch that lightly flirted with him. As she lit the cigarette in his lips, as the faint smoke rose, he raised an eyebrow and glanced over at the door, casually eyeing me without pausing his gaze. His words were dripping with arrogance and disdain. Do I need a reason to want a woman? I didn't know how I managed to leave. On the street late at night, the snow was relentless, and the cold wind cut through to the bone. The chill in my heart spread throughout my limbs, and I felt as if I was submerged in an ice-cold lake, the biting cold making it hard to breathe. Sam's best friend, Lucas, came running out. "Sis-in-law, don't be mad. Sam's drunk. He was just joking." I spoke in a calm tone. "Is that so?" "Really?" he said, carefully observing my expression. "That girl's just a small-time model. She doesn't know any better. Sam didn't do anything." "Oh, sis-in-law, you." Seeing my calm demeanor, he seemed to get more nervous. "Come on, let's go inside. It's cold out here." I quietly stared across the street, not moving, as that suffocating feeling began to fade. Something in my chest seemed to be pulled away along with it. "No need." I shook my head lightly, a faint smile curling on my lips. "Actually, he's right. Sam, the heir of the prestigious Sam family, the carefree second-generation heir, adored by everyone, so precious that no one dared to look him in the eye. A man like Sam had every right to be arrogant. Indulging in youth, he passed through many girls, letting them confess their love, but never once showing a sincere heart. Whether he wanted a woman or not, he never needed a reason. Leaving now, the snow was falling heavier, and I got into the car and left. Lucas, still unconvinced, followed me. "Sis-in-law." I waved my hand without looking back. "Goodbye." To Lucas. To Sam. The car drove into the icy wilderness, and even though the heater was on full blast, I was still shivering, curled up in my seat. I buried my head in my knees just to feel a bit of warmth. I thought back to the beginning, when I had avoided Sam as much as possible. But how did it end up with us being entangled for 7 years? It's hard to explain, and I don't dare to look back and think about it anymore. Those long 7 years, our love and hate were all too clear. When things were good, we were inseparable, drowning in sweet affection. But when we fought, the words we threw at each other were sharp and piercing. We argued, broke up, and made up countless times, and it's hard to even keep count. At this point, it seemed that our fate was over. Chapter 4. I was dignified enough to leave his world quietly, without making a scene. I didn't even bother to remember the girl's appearance who was by his side. It was only later, in a foreign country, that I occasionally heard news about him. I heard that the girl Sam had by his side looked like me. Her name was Julia. Sam pampered her in every way, giving her lavish gifts, taking her everywhere by car, sending her expensive houses and cars, and using countless resources to smooth her path in the entertainment industry. In the 2 years that I disappeared without a trace, it was Julia who had soared in her career, because of her striking resemblance to me, and the incredible resources she had. Her career followed the same path I once walked. She had even earned the nickname Little Olivia. People both inside and outside the circle said that it wouldn't be long before Julia would completely replace me in the entertainment world. I couldn't help but think, replacing me in the entertainment world was nothing. He was also replacing me. "Olivia, what are you thinking about?" Diana waved her hand in front of my eyes. I suddenly came back to my senses. "Nothing. Maybe I drank too much and I'm a little dizzy." Let's go home. After saying goodbye to Diana, I stood at my doorstep, taking a deep breath before pushing the door open. The lights inside weren't on, and it was eerily quiet. Just as I was about to breathe a sigh of relief, the lights suddenly came on. A woman sitting in a wheelchair had no idea how long she had been waiting. She impatiently stretched out her palm toward me. The bracelet. I instinctively clenched my hand, my nails digging into my palm. Mom. I didn't get it. She looked at me in shock for a moment, then immediately became furious. Useless. In the next moment, she grabbed whatever was on the table and threw it at me. A thermos hit my collarbone, and a dull pain spread. I stood there calmly, listening to her rage through the night. I told you, no matter how much money you need to spend, get it back. Are you reluctant to spend the money? Or do I mean nothing to you? So, you didn't take my words seriously? None of those. I thought about how to explain. Should I tell her that I couldn't outbid Sam? I couldn't say it, and I didn't want to say it. She angrily slapped the armrests of her wheelchair. Then why? Mom, let it go. Shut up. She became more agitated, her body rocking violently. If you can't get the bracelet, then you should just die. I wanted to step forward and comfort her, but my steps faltered and I couldn't move. She cursed for a long time, and I didn't say another word. When the door slammed shut, the world finally quieted down. I dragged my heavy steps up to the 3rd floor, sitting in front of the dark floor-to-ceiling window. In the distance, the city lights stretched for miles, like the starry sea burning in the dark night sky. I thought about the bracelet on Julia's wrist, and I thought about Sam. At this moment, the pain in my collarbone seemed to spread deep into my heart. An inexplicable emotion, along with the darkness, swallowed me whole. The phone suddenly rang. I picked it up, but no one spoke. The sound of wind swirled through the receiver, and the person's breath mixed with the wind. Unclear. My heart skipped a beat, and Sam's face appeared in my mind. It was him. It had to be. He wasn't speaking, just like the silence on this call, both enigmatic and torturous. I thought, he's waiting for me to speak first. He's waiting for me to beg him. For two people who had shared 7 years of their lives, our understanding of each other was never shallow. But Sam, that arrogant heir, if he called me, he must have been especially unwilling. If I didn't speak now, he'd probably get angry. I pulled the phone away from my ear and threw it aside. Let him be angry. That would be better. I patiently took out a cigarette, flicked the lighter, and the sound of the flame igniting filled the air. I didn't know what nerve Sam had touched, but the next second, the call ended. It made me think of a few old memories. One night, after he smoked, I had a sudden impulse to try the taste. I took the cigarette from his lips and took a drag. No experience. I inhaled too hard and immediately started coughing, my eyes watering. Sam laughed, gloating. Serves you right. Then, with the faint smoke still on his lips, he kissed me, lingering with a soft touch. Is this how you want to taste it? I guess Sam must have remembered that too. How good we were in the past, and how awkward things were now. Chapter 5. I didn't beg Sam, but a few days later, I received the bracelet he had someone send to me. Seriously, what's wrong with him? Diana was utterly confused. He takes it from you, gives it to his little lover, and then takes it back and sends it to you. Isn't that just trying to irritate people on purpose? I didn't want to guess Sam's mindset. I just felt tired of it. I closed the box and sent the items back the way they came. You really don't want it? Diana seemed a bit reluctant. She was silent for a moment and then said, I think he's trying to soften up. If you don't appreciate it, he'll blow up. I laughed lightly. In his world, the word soften doesn't exist. I don't think so. Diana disagreed nonchalantly. Sam has indeed done a lot of foolish things, but I think he doesn't want to break up with you. He's just too proud. I gently touched my bare ring finger, where there had once been a simple band. I exhaled softly. We broke up 2 years ago. A few days later, one evening after the recording wrapped up, on the way home, I dozed off, and when I woke up, I was already at my doorstep. The autumn wind had a chill to it, and as I raised my head, I caught sight of a luxury sports car parked outside and the figure standing in the night. I didn't know how long he had been there. Slightly hunched, fingers absent-mindedly flicking a lighter, the flickering light danced over his brows, dissipating the usual arrogance and making him seem extremely cold. Also, dangerous. I hesitated in my steps, and at that moment, he glanced toward me. The night was heavy, making it hard to see his emotions, but even so, under his gaze, I still felt a prickling sensation on my back. Sam reached back into the car seat and picked up the box containing the bracelet. He opened and closed it in his hand, patiently waiting for me to approach. He knew what this bracelet meant to me. My father was a superstitious man, and even though he became a wealthy man later, the bracelet that had been passed down through generations of the family remained his most treasured possession. He always said the bracelet had spiritual energy. If it were lost, it would mean the end of the Olivia family line. When the family went bankrupt, everything was auctioned off to settle debts. This had always been my mother's worry. I had inquired several times, but to no avail. Finally, this wealthy lady who bought the bracelet at the auction had decided to put it up for sale again. I rushed back, but Sam intercepted it. "What's this about?" His eyelids drooped lazily, his voice sounding indifferent. It had been 2 years since we last spoke, and this was his first sentence, but I knew him too well. The more calm he was, the more intense the undercurrent of emotion. I coldly responded, "I don't want it." Seeing the bracelet on Julia's wrist that day made me sad. We had been so close in the past, and Sam knew exactly how to wound me with a soft blade. Sam's hands stopped moving. After a moment, he let out a small scolding sound. "All right, you've got some backbone." The night breeze stirred, and the air seemed to be hiding an uncertain storm. He casually raised his hand, and the bracelet hit the ground with a crisp sound, breaking into several pieces. I held my breath, not making a sound. "Olivia." Sam's tone was light, yet it failed to hide his anger. "Don't keep challenging my patience." Chapter 6. The engine roared, cutting through the night sky as it sped away. I stood still for a moment before turning and heading inside. Why doesn't Sam understand? I'm not making a scene or throwing a tantrum. I simply don't care anymore. Early the next morning, Mrs. Kim came to pick me up for an audition. With a serious tone, she said, "You've been away for 2 years, and this is your best chance to make a comeback. You must seize it." Oscar Fu, the genius director who returned from overseas, had won the highest film awards both domestically and internationally with just 2 films in 3 short years. Gaining unprecedented fame, the news that Oscar Fu would be the producer and director of his new film, For Her, created a buzz from the start. Stars of all sizes had been vying for roles, trying to land a part in the movie. I laughed bitterly. With so many big-name stars fighting for the female lead, why would they choose me? For an actress who had been absent for 2 years during her peak, this was undoubtedly career suicide. Oscar Fu, with his exacting standards, would never choose an actress like me. "But you've won the Best Actress award before," Mrs. Kim said optimistically. "Besides, I've read the script, and the female lead is made for you." I didn't take her words to heart. The entertainment industry has always been about climbing up and pushing others down. While Oscar Fu may be proud, he's not immune to the pressures of the industry. I had no hopes for this role, especially when I saw Julia, surrounded by a crowd, entering the room with all eyes on her. Mrs. Kim went next door for a meeting, leaving just me and my assistant. "The newbie certainly knows how to make an entrance," my assistant whispered. I closed the script and gently replied, "Don't gossip about others." My assistant pouted, clearly disliking Julia. "Olivia, it's such a coincidence to see you again." Julia came over with a sweet smile. "I've watched your shows for a long time, and today I finally get to meet you in person." I gave a slight nod. "It's indeed a coincidence." I noticed her subtle change in expression before she quickly lifted her lips and took a coffee cup from her assistant, handing it to me. Out of courtesy, I stood to refuse. But suddenly, her hand tilted, and the coffee splashed all over me. I was wearing a white dress for the audition, and the stain was particularly noticeable. The scalding heat seeped through the fabric, stinging my skin. "Aw," she feigned surprise, apologizing insincerely. "I'm so sorry. I accidentally spilled it." She pretended to hurriedly grab napkins to wipe the stain. smiling sweetly. If I were you, I wouldn't have come here. You probably don't know, but my boyfriend is an investor in this show, and he said that the lead role can only be mine. Chapter 7. I kept my expression neutral. Oh, how interesting. Earlier at the auction, Julia had acted so calm and composed. Why did she lose her composure so quickly? Perhaps my indifference made her lose her smile. I don't mean to fight with you, she said, squeezing her voice into a sweet, innocent tone. But, you know, since you're older, maybe you should give the opportunity to younger people, right? I could clearly understand her meaning. You're old now. Don't fight with me. For work and for men. I quietly looked at the teardrop mole below her left eyelid, then smiled. What are you laughing at? She asked. If I were you, I wouldn't do such a foolish thing, I replied. I gently wiped the coffee stain from my slim fingers and asked, do you know what kind of person he is? Sam, that rich young man, knew how to be gentle and cruel at the same time. He would pamper you when it pleased him, but if he grew tired of you, your life or death wouldn't matter to him. I wasn't unaware of the women around Sam over the years, but no one had ever dared come to me with such arrogance. Julia was the dumbest one. Since you call me a senior, I should give you a little advice. I stared into her eyes, my smile widening. Don't mess with me. Julia couldn't keep up her act anymore, and her smile turned harsh as she raised her voice. Olivia, you were just a kept woman, a secret lover for years. What are you pretending to be? Kept woman? Secret lover? I couldn't help but laugh. So, Sam had defined our 7 years like this. Before I could speak, Mrs. Kim's voice came from the door. Julia, what nonsense are you saying? My assistant had sneaked out and called Mrs. Kim back. It's fine, I said dismissively. This catfight is boring. Let's go. Who's the one pre-selected? Mrs. Kim pointed at Julia. Is it you? Julia, beaming with pride, said, my boyfriend is the investor. You must know that. Mrs. Kim fell silent and turned to look at the door. Director Fu. Is it? I hadn't noticed, but a young man had appeared by the door. Through the open window, the lush greenery swayed in the wind, and the man's cold, handsome face was shrouded in dappled light, giving him an air of mysterious detachment. He was young, yet exuded the restrained, old-fashioned charm of an artist. Oscar Fu, his name matched his demeanor perfectly. Yeah, it's pre-selected. The man spoke, his voice slow and deep. Mrs. Kim's face hardened, while Julia proudly lifted her chin. Director Fu, I'll perform well. I remained calm, preparing to leave. Wait. Oscar Fu raised his hand in a perfect gentlemanly gesture. Miss Olivia, are you upset about being pre-selected by me? I blinked in surprise, noticing Julia's face instantly pale. She protested. This isn't fair. Oscar Fu withdrew his hand, his attitude calm and unapologetic. Sorry, I'm not a person who believes in fairness. Chapter 8. The next day, I received the collaboration agreement from Oscar Fu. Ms. Kim was delighted. Getting this role will make your future much easier. I, of course, knew how important this opportunity was to me, but I couldn't feel happy. Ms. Kim. That day Julia mentioned that the investor for this project is Sam. At my reminder, Ms. Kim's expression shifted slightly. Are you worried? She didn't finish her sentence, but we both understood without saying a word. Sam had invested in just for her to pave the way for Julia. Now that Oscar Fu had refused to cast me, whether it was to support Julia or just to spite me, if Sam withdrew his investment, Oscar Fu would definitely find himself in a tough spot. I felt uneasy. Don't overthink it, Ms. Kim comforted me. It was Oscar Fu's decision to choose you, and whatever happens later, he should be prepared for it. Besides, you've known young Master Sam for so many years. He'll surely remember the ties between you. And he won't. He will. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. I remembered that night when Sam had smashed the bracelet in anger. He was burning with rage. If this young master was upset, no one would have it easy. While we were talking, the assistant suddenly exclaimed, Quick, look at Instagram. Just for Her has lost its funding. What? Ms. Kim grabbed the phone from her, and after reading the content, fell silent. It was something I had expected, so I wasn't particularly surprised. Olivia, do you think Director Fu will cancel his collaboration with you because of this? The assistant asked, worried. Ms. Kim shot her a look but couldn't say anything to refute. Maybe, I said with a faint smile. Being replaced due to capital pressure wasn't anything new in the entertainment industry. The assistant was upset for me. How can young Master Sam do this? He's backing Julia, but he shouldn't hurt you. It's not really about being hurt. It's just the rules of the game. Whoever comes in doesn't change anything. Anyone who got in Julia's way would end up like this. And I had no reason to feel wronged. Ms. Kim was pacing nervously, agitated. Can you be like everyone else? She said indignantly. You've known him for so many years. Doesn't he care at all? I lowered my head and stared at my phone. Though I wasn't really looking at it, my thoughts were wandering. People always talk about old friendships. But for young Master Sam, I was just a past that wasn't pleasant or worth remembering in his bright, colorful life. What old friendship could there be? Chapter 9. In the evening, Diana came to find me. The assistant kept talking nonstop, complaining about Julia and mentioning the incident where she spilled coffee on me. Diana was so furious that she looked like she might explode. How dare she? She's just relying on someone backing her. The assistant kept stoking the fire. I frowned and glanced at the assistant. She made a gesture to indicate silence and stopped talking. That little bitch. Do I really have to tolerate her? Diana's anger couldn't be contained anymore, and she grabbed the car keys, storming toward the door. Diana. I immediately felt something was wrong and quickly followed her out. At the door, I only saw the red sports car speeding away, its taillights glowing. I couldn't help but think back to something that happened many years ago. When I was 16, my family went bankrupt, and the huge change turned me into a joke in high society. Diana once, for my sake, beat a young lady who had kicked me when I was down, leaving her bloodied and begging for mercy on the floor. Because of this, Diana was sent abroad by her family, and she suffered quite a bit. My mother always said I was a troublemaker. Thinking about it now, it's somewhat fitting. Diana wasn't answering her phone, and I had no idea where to find her. If she was going to look for Julia, she would most likely go to Sam to get her. Sam, in the 2 years since we parted, we hadn't exchanged a single phone call. A few days ago, though, he called, but not a single word was spoken. I hesitated for a long time with my finger hovering over his number. But in the end, I dialed it. The ringing sound echoed in my ears. Each second felt like an eternity. Finally, he picked up, but I suddenly found myself unable to speak. He didn't say anything either, but the sharp, noisy voices of women came clearly through the receiver. My heart sank. Is Diana with you? It seemed Sam had moved away from the phone a little. He coldly drawled, "Who are you?" knowing full well he was doing this on purpose. I was still taken aback. "I'm Olivia." "Oh," he responded lazily. "What's up?" A question asked on purpose. I calmly asked, "Where are you?" "I'm coming over." There was a moment of silence. Then Sam let out a light, mocking laugh. "Looking for me?" I was looking for Diana. Hearing his sarcasm, I endured it. "Yes." "Heh." Sam's voice dripped with tired mockery. "Sisterly love." "Huh? For her. You not only made the first phone call in 2 years, but you're even willing to come see me." This young master was great at using passive-aggressive tones. I patiently repeated my question, "Where are you?" "All right. Don't bother." Sam lost his patience, his voice turning coldly polite. Click. The sound of him hanging up echoed through the phone. I silently listened to the dial tone on the other end. His message was clear. He didn't want to see me. Chapter 10. 2 years later, I stood once again in front of this luxurious clubhouse suite. Sam owned many properties, but this one was his favorite. So, back when we were still together, whenever he got mad and disappeared, I always knew where to find him. His friends used to tease him, "That arrogant brat. When he's mad, he won't even move an inch. It's obvious he's just waiting for you to come and soothe him. Don't spoil him." In the end, I really stopped spoiling him. The last time, the door opened and then closed again, just like my heart, closed and locked away. I took a deep breath and calmly pushed the door open. The strong smell of alcohol hit me immediately. The large wine cabinet, with the rare wines Sam had spent a fortune collecting, was all smashed into pieces. The floor was soaked with colorful liquids, glass fragments scattered throughout, leaving no space to step. I looked around but couldn't see Diana anywhere. In the midst of the wreckage, Sam was leaning casually on the only clean leather sofa left, completely unfazed, lazily fiddling with his phone. The light from the overhead lamp cast a shadow across his brows and eyes, not sharp, but chilling and imposing. Lucas was talking to him about something, but when he heard footsteps, he looked over. "Hi, sis-in-law," he blurted out when he saw me. That address made me momentarily dazed. Perhaps it was because I had been with Sam for quite a long time, and Lucas had gotten used to calling me that. I didn't mind, giving a faint smile. "Long time no see." "Yeah, it's been 2 years," he asked with concern. "Sis-in-law, where have you been these 2 years?" "Scandinavia," I answered vaguely. "Oh," he paused for a moment, smiling meaningfully. "That's funny. Sam has been there a few times too." Sam didn't react much, completely uninterested in our conversation, not even lifting an eyelid. Lucas continued asking, "Have you been doing well?" I didn't want to talk about the past 2 years. "Pretty good." I shifted the topic. "Has Diana been here?" Given the state of destruction here, it was likely Diana's doing, but I still hoped to confirm it with a little bit of luck. "Yeah, she's been here." Lucas held back a smile. "She said she was looking for Julia, but didn't find her. She was like an angry little lion, smashing things while cursing." He glanced at Sam. "Some people's crimes are beyond count." My forehead throbbed, but my heart relaxed a little. At least Diana hadn't found Julia. "Where is she now?" Before Lucas could answer, Sam coldly spoke, marking the first words of the night. "What do you think?" I quickly turned to look at Sam. His gaze was still fixed on his phone, his expression indifferent, but the tightly pressed lips unmistakably conveyed an intense sense of hostility and danger. The relief I had just felt evaporated. Sam had always been the center of attention, a young master who had been accustomed to having things his way. If he wasn't comfortable, he could be ruthless when he was younger. As he grew older, he calmed down, and his carefree, devil-may-care attitude was nothing but a smokescreen to deceive others. The Wynn family and Sam's family had some connections, so Sam wouldn't be too harsh on her. But a small punishment from the young master was something no ordinary person could bear. I looked at Sam and, with a calm but firm voice, said, "Diana's actions are because of me. I apologize to you. Tonight, I'll compensate you for all your losses." Compensate? As if he had heard a joke, Sam retracted his long legs and stood up, towering over me, his gaze full of mockery. "What are you going to use to compensate?" Chapter 11. I choked, rendered speechless. Yes, I indeed had the ability to compensate him for tonight's losses. But what Sam lacked most was money. After being scolded relentlessly, could Sam really tolerate this? I tried to keep my composure and softly said, "You ask, and I'll do what I can." Sam remained silent, looking at me with a half-smile, arrogantly dismissive. Under his gaze, I felt a chill run down my back. This coldness seemed to creep into my heart, and soon my entire heart was filled with a cold sensation. "Do you really want to do this?" He lazily flicked his eyelids, playing indifferent. "Do what?" I stopped smiling and silently looked at him. Sam's nastiness lay in the fact that he knew exactly what you meant but chose to ignore it, provoking you with his casual indifference, watching as you lost control while he remained a detached observer. This feeling was unbearable. The atmosphere grew tense. Lucas was the first to crack. "Can we talk calmly? No need to be so hostile right from the start." "Get lost," Sam snapped, raising his eyebrows in annoyance. "All right then," Lucas replied, as if granted a pardon, quickly making his way toward the door. As he passed me, he waved cheerfully. "Sis-in-law, see you next time." I smiled and nodded. Perhaps it was better not to meet again. The air became quieter, and I quietly thought over recent events. Since I returned, Sam had been relentlessly pushing at me, though he didn't overtly act as if he was out to get me. Everything seemed to point in my direction. 2 years ago, it was also here. He had said, "Do I need a reason to keep a woman?" I took that as the end of our relationship. But it seemed he didn't think so. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said, "Stop always challenging my patience" when we met. He was a proud young master who had always been in control in every relationship. When it was over, the girl should beg and plead, full of reluctance. My dignified nonchalance had become his obsession. Thinking about this made me feel irritated. "Sam, is it only when I beg you that you'll feel better?" Despite the discomfort in my heart, I couldn't help but loosen my expression and smile. "Fine, I beg you. Now." Sam should be satisfied, but for some reason, after I said this, his expression darkened at a visibly rapid pace. His eyes fixed on me, the corners of his lips curling into a cold smile. "Do you think I want you to beg me? Isn't it?" The last time I didn't beg him, he had smashed the bracelet without hesitation. If he hadn't given Julia enough confidence, how could she have dared to throw coffee at me? Now, it wasn't necessarily that he was truly angry at Diana. He was just using the situation to force me to bow down and beg him, to lose my dignity. I didn't feel wronged, but it was hard to say I wasn't hurt. Those 7 years, neither too long nor too short, I had invested all my heart and love, and he had discarded it like an old shoe. The ones who betrayed genuine love were the ones who shamelessly trampled on my dignity. "You said I have dignity, right? So now I don't." I slightly tilted my head, hiding the bitterness in my eyes. "Can you let me go now?" With a loud bang, Sam angrily kicked the table. I flinched, but didn't avoid it. I endured his fury. "I really don't understand. You can smile at everyone, but when it comes to me, you can't even say a kind word. No matter what I do, you won't appreciate it. You said you didn't want the bracelet, and now if someone gives you trouble, you blame me." I thought, after knowing each other for over 20 years, after those 7 years of mutual support, you must have had at least some real feelings for me. Because of one angry remark from me, you can disappear so completely. He was deeply disappointed, yet the corner of his lips held a faint smile. And in the dim light, his face took on an icy, desolate look. But when the words came out, his voice was hoarse and filled with sorrow. "Olivia, who is it that can't let go of whom?" Chapter 12. In the end, Sam slammed the door and left. The loud bang echoed in my ears, and I hunched my shoulders, standing frozen for a long while. My phone kept ringing, and I answered it weakly. Diana cautiously asked, "Olivia, Lucas said you went to find Sam. Did he make things difficult for you?" "No." I forced myself to stay calm. "Are you okay? What could possibly happen to me? Sam doesn't care about anyone. But my brother is here," Diana said regretfully. "I was too impulsive, thinking I could vent for you. I didn't expect you might end up taking the brunt of it. Don't blame yourself. If he's unhappy, he was bound to cause trouble sooner or later." Diana's outburst was just an opportunity for him. Sigh. Diana sighed deeply. "The young master is really difficult. I can tell. He clearly cares about you, but can't lower himself to make amends. So he does all these ridiculous things, forcing you to lower your head first." She summed it up. Fate's cruelty. That night, I kept thinking about Sam, and I had to agree with Diana's words. Yes, Sam and I truly were a twisted fate. When we were children, Sam didn't like me. He had always been handsome, and the adults loved pinching his cheeks. I, too, would reach out my hand. He would ruthlessly push me away and coldly say, "Ugly monster." I cried so hard. As we grew older, he still didn't like me and never played with me. Every day, there were different girls calling him to come out and play, but they were all beautiful. I thought to myself, surely it was because I wasn't pretty enough, so he wouldn't play with me. As a child, I tasted a bit of loneliness from Sam. By my teenage years, Sam had become wild. The girls around him came and went, one after another. He still didn't like me. Occasionally, we would meet at family gatherings, and the adults would joke about us, childhood sweethearts. A perfect match. The young master would frown, lazily speaking in his Beijing accent. "Don't tease me. Whoever wants to serve a little fairy can go ahead." The adults would laugh, and I'd fire back. Pfft, as if anyone would want you. At that time, my life was so smooth that I had no room for any sadness, and I didn't care whether he liked me or not. He thought I was pretentious and dramatic, and I thought he was reckless and arrogant. We were like two parallel lines, growing wildly on our respective life tracks. When we occasionally crossed paths, we had an unspoken understanding to ignore each other. For a long time, I took it for granted. Sam and I would live the most brilliant lives, becoming inconsequential passers-by in each other's stories. But when did things change? It must have been that winter when I was 16. My relationship with Sam, like my life, turned upside down that year. The bankruptcy saga lasted all winter, and my father eventually became a small box in my hands. On a bone-chilling winter night, I held his urn, letting the heavy snow cover me as I silently waited for life to slowly slip away. Someone rushed over to me in a panic, and with frenzied energy, they pulled me up. The cold snow reflected on Sam's handsome face, and it was the first time I saw him so frantic. His forehead covered with veins, and his whole body trembling with anger. He glared at the person and shouted, "Olivia, are you sick?" Chapter 13. Sam was right. I was truly sick. Though I had always been a spoiled girl, I rarely cried. During that time, however, I cried often, and for an entire winter. My eyes remained red and swollen. Sam, with his flamboyant and carefree demeanor, I never knew where he found the patience, but he endured and stayed by my side, helping me get through each dark day and night. I survived that difficult period, but I also fell deeper into the young master's many tender affections. When I was clear-headed, I would often feel insecure because of our mismatched status, but I found it hard to resist his gentle affection. When we first got together, there were always people who knew the situation, sneering at me, mocking me for clinging to Sam as my lifeline, saying that being rejected was just a matter of time. It was truly pathetic. I, too, was a girl raised with care, with a strong sense of pride embedded in my bones. So, I suggested we keep our relationship a secret. Sam initially disagreed, but he couldn't resist my constant persistence. That day, he grabbed my lips, and as we kissed, he mischievously asked, "Have you thought it through?" "What?" Half joking, half serious, he teased, "There are plenty of people who think about me. Don't get jealous when you find out." I knew he was telling the truth, but I still nodded firmly. At that time, I was so confident. Although Sam was careless, he came from a prestigious family, and the strict family teachings were deeply ingrained in him. He followed rules and principles, so I believed he wouldn't let emotions harm his reputation. Even if he truly liked someone else, it should only be after he had clearly cut ties with me. I was so sure of this. But later, most of our arguments stemmed from this issue. The girls chasing after him came one after another. Though I never saw him truly fall for anyone, the rumors that reached my ears were always filled with ambiguity and flirtation. Sometimes, I couldn't bear the sourness in my heart and would inevitably argue with him. Sam would remind me nonchalantly, "You're the one who's afraid people will know you're my girlfriend. Remember? This is a different matter." I retorted angrily. "You could at least admit you have a girlfriend, right? And if I do, what's it to them? What have I done?" His calmness only made it seem like I was the unreasonable one. I haven't held their hands, I haven't kissed them, and I definitely haven't slept with them. He smirked coldly, his words sharp and taunting. "You've held hands and kissed with those male actors." Did I get angry? That's my job. It felt like his retaliation against me, and Sam wouldn't give in an inch. I'm just playing a game too. These arguments, day after day, never had a resolution. When the arguments got heated, we would relentlessly hurt each other, saying cruel words over and over again. We were young, and our love and hate were intense. After each fight, he would do his best to pamper me, and I would, time after time, lick my wounds and consciously fall deeper. We continued our entangled relationship for years, talking about love under the moon, fighting fiercely with words that bled. For those 7 long years, even at the worst of times, I never once thought of leaving. I thought that no matter how reckless Sam was, he wouldn't be so vile. But then he casually said those words, shattering all my dignity. Sam said I had no real feelings for him and that I left him because of one sentence. How could he not understand? I could wholeheartedly give him my true feelings, enduring the pain with pleasure. but I would never become someone who could be summoned and dismissed at will. He denied my true feelings, and I no longer wished to argue. I never doubted that we truly loved each other passionately and sincerely. It was just that we were like birds and fish, traveling together for a while. But ultimately, our paths diverged. We've gone down different roads. Chapter 14. I spent the whole night lost in my dreams. When I woke up in the morning, I felt groggy and disoriented. Ms. Kim called with excitement. Director Fu has scheduled the signing time with me. He didn't seem to have any intentions of replacing anyone because of the funding withdrawal. We can rest assured. I rubbed my sore temples, a little surprised. Oscar Fu was indeed an interesting person. The signing was set for the afternoon. Ms. Kim had already gone over the contract with Oscar Fu, so there wasn't much to discuss. However, given the recent withdrawal of funds, I couldn't be sure if it had anything to do with me. But considering Julia's animosity toward me, who knew what kind of trouble she might stir up? I felt the need to remind Oscar Fu that working with me might bring him trouble. A movie was the result of the efforts of many people. I truly needed this opportunity, but I could never let my personal grievances lead to potential risks that would pull others into a passive position. I subtly mentioned, regarding the investors' withdrawal last time, it has nothing to do with you. Oscar Fu interrupted me lightly. I persuaded them to withdraw. I widened my eyes in surprise, momentarily stunned. Oscar Fu's words were concise. I will not accept any investment intended to influence the casting of a role. Incredibly, at that moment, two words flashed through my mind: integrity. Director Fu maintains his principles, upholding his boundaries. This is admirable. These weren't just polite words, but sincere admiration. Ms. Olivia, you might have misunderstood, Oscar Fu said slowly, but with a hint of humor. Now, I'm the investor, and you're the one chosen. I wasn't a humorous person, but I couldn't help but smile a little. There was a contradictory yet harmonious aura about Oscar Fu. He stood there quietly, distant in his nobility, yet his manners were so courteous that they made others feel at ease. What did I do to deserve his attention? Looking at the contract he had pushed forward, I couldn't resist asking, "Forgive me for being bold, but why did you choose me?" The entertainment industry was always harsh, and I had disappeared for 2 years, already far behind my peers, not to mention the continuous rise of new talent, flooding in like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. My current situation was awkward. Oscar Fu throwing me a lifeline at this moment was like sending charcoal in the snow. He, a man who was so meticulous and demanding about film art. How did he skip the audition and directly decide on me? I wasn't narcissistic enough to think my acting was irreplaceable. No matter how you looked at it, Oscar Fu had better choices. Oscar Fu slowly raised his head, his tone serious. Ms. Olivia, you are a good actress, but more importantly, you're worth it. Chapter 15. As I prepared to join the set, I found myself trending for the first time in a long while. The cause was an interview with Julia. She appeared on camera, her eyes red with grievance. A while ago, I received an audition invitation from a famous director's team. I prepared for it for a long time, but when I went there, they told me the role was already decided. I didn't even get a chance to audition. Soon, paparazzi exposed that the famous director Julia was referring to was Oscar Fu, and the person who was already decided for the role was me. Both Oscar Fu and I were trending together. Julia's fans sympathized with their idol, flooding the internet to tear into me and Oscar Fu, an outdated actress relying on her looks and body to exchange resources with a self-righteous, so-called genius director, blocking new talent from opportunities. This story was explosive, and the heat kept rising, adding to the fact that I had been missing for so long. Suddenly appearing on the trending list in this way, many people began to speculate where I had been these last 2 years. Soon, someone came forward with a scoop, claiming they had seen me abroad, at a hospital. From there, more and more explosive revelations came out, and the speculations about me turned into facts that everyone believed. Olivia had run off abroad to hide and had a child, with the father's identity remaining a mystery. What the hell? How could someone like Oscar Fu be interested in this kind of woman? The person above, Director Fu, isn't any better either. They make a perfect match. Have you ever thought that maybe the child is Oscar Fu's? They indulged in wild speculation, and the story developed more absurdly. Oscar Fu and I were nailed to the pillar of shame. Julia, on the other hand, garnered a great deal of sympathy, and her popularity surged. Ms. Kim's phone kept ringing, and she answered call after call from the media, eventually turning it off altogether. Has Julia lost her mind? She was rejected for trying to pay her way onto the set, and now she was turning the tables and using public opinion to bring Oscar Fu and me down. She even used the 2 years I had been out of the spotlight to stir things up. This was a malicious move, but also not a clever one. I closed my phone and sneered. She's digging her own grave. Oscar Fu is the director. Who he chooses to work with has nothing to do with being decided ahead of time. Julia's actions may have let her vent, but they also offended a large number of directors and producers in the industry. Who would dare work with her now? She has someone backing her up. What's there to be afraid of? Ms. Kim said sarcastically. I didn't respond. Sam's favor was freely given and decisively withdrawn. Julia was truly foolish. Ms. Kim and I agreed to remain calm for now, avoiding any traps set to prove our innocence. The official Instagram account for Just For Her quickly responded with a statement. It was brief and to the point. With sharp wording, they denied inviting Julia for an audition, and mercilessly pointed out that she had tried to force her way into the role under the pretense of bringing in funding. Their team, including Oscar Fu himself, absolutely refused to accept investments aimed at influencing the casting of a role. The so-called righteous director, accused of engaging in power for sex transactions, was suddenly portrayed as someone who could not be swayed by capital and stood by his principles. The backlash came so quickly that the public was stunned. Not long after the statement was released, a video of Julia throwing coffee at me, claiming her boyfriend was the investor and that she was the chosen one, quickly spread. It was obvious who was behind this manipulation. The public opinion shifted dramatically, and Julia became the target of widespread criticism. The sudden rise and fall were too fast, and my fans were overjoyed. Case solved. This was a scheme by an imposter trying to take the main role. No way. No way. Does she really think that just because people call her Little Olivia, she can compete with the real Olivia? Oscar Fu deciding to give her the role? Laughable. Does Julia even deserve that? After this drama, I became the biggest beneficiary. Not only did I gain hundreds of thousands of new followers, but my star popularity continued to rise. Ms. Kim couldn't stop smiling, thanks to Julia's help. My career is soaring. Chapter 16. The night before I was supposed to join the set, I went to bed early. In the middle of the night, I woke up and saw heavy snow outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the glass foggy and dim. My phone, which had been placed on the nightstand, kept vibrating incessantly. It sounds strangely out of place in the quiet of the night. I didn't expect it to be Sam. After our unpleasant parting last time, Lucas did call me once. Sam had gone racing, playing recklessly as if he didn't care about his life, and no one could talk him out of it. After some rambling, Lucas finally got to the point. Sis-in-law, I know Sam was wrong back then. You know his temper. He wasn't sincere. After you left, he went crazy looking for you. Maybe you should soften up a bit. I raised an eyebrow in amusement. Don't you think that's absurd? It was impossible. Why would he say that? I would never appease him again, and I definitely wouldn't back down. Lucas sighed. You both are too stubborn. No one is willing to take the first step. But the thing about love is, there's no winning or losing. I felt a surge of irritation. Lucas, I never thought about winning. He was momentarily silenced and didn't say anything further. It seemed that everyone who was familiar with us thought, without question, that Sam and I would never truly break up. They believed that we were simply testing each other, waiting for him to lower his head and soften, and then I would throw myself back into his arms without hesitation. It's hard to say. Perhaps it was because our past love and hate were so intense that they developed the illusion of us being inseparable. No matter what. I don't know. Sam's hoarse voice pulled me back from my thoughts. I asked, confused. Don't know what? Everything she's done to target you. It wasn't my intention. He paused, his voice growing more obscure. And the bracelet, she took it without my permission and wore it secretly. I remembered the day of the auction, and now I understood why he looked so displeased when he saw the bracelet on Julia's wrist. From the beginning, I intended to buy it and give it to you. Even though he had clearly made an effort to control his emotions, I could still hear the broken compromise in his voice. He was truly softening, but I didn't feel relieved. Instead, I felt a deep sense of melancholy. Those who have truly loved never care about winning or losing. I replied softly. It doesn't matter anymore. Whether it was Julia, the bracelet, or Sam, it didn't matter anymore. It does matter. Sam's voice dropped, stubbornly repeating, everything about you matters to me. He had always been stubborn, and it seemed nothing I said would matter. I fell silent instead. Neither of us spoke, and the conversation seemed endless, with time only adding to the silence between us. Our emotions and love seemed to go backward in time, until everything returned to zero. These last 2 years, what happened to you? Sam suddenly asked. I teasingly responded. You don't believe the rumors online, do you? Although Julia had apologized, I was brought back into the public eye by the media, and the discussions kept soaring, especially the speculations about where I had been during these 2 years. Someone had posted a photo of me abroad in a hospital, and it wasn't hard for people to speculate that I had secretly hidden away to have a child. Such groundless rumors were one thing when other people believed them, but Sam shouldn't have. To be blunt, whether I was pregnant or not, Sam would be the one who knew best. I don't believe it, Sam said with restraint, still trembling slightly. Are you sick? I froze for a moment, and painful memories seemed to surface, as if they were about to break through. Quickly regaining my composure, I replied, no. Suddenly, I heard Sam's heavy breathing through the phone, his emotions surging uncontrollably. We had invaded each other's every inch of skin in countless days and nights, peeling away our hearts to reveal love and hate so deep. Even if I lied, I couldn't deceive him. He could no longer hold back, his voice breaking as he asked, Olivia, have I ruined everything? Chapter 17. After the call ended, the world returned to boundless silence. On this cold winter night, my thoughts were a little chaotic, and I couldn't help but think back to the past. 2 years ago, on a night like this, the words I wanted to say to him kept repeating in my mind. Sam, can we stop fighting? I'm sick. The doctor said it's pretty serious. Please hug me. I'm so scared. Yes. I was incredibly fragile back then. Was I afraid of dying? I had learned to face death calmly when I was 16, but falling in love with someone truly makes you fear death. I was so foolish back then, always thinking, what would he do if I died? So, I just wanted to return to his side. Even if all he did was hug me, it would make all the pain I'd face from illness in the future worth it. But Sam said, do I need a reason to want a woman? On the way out that night, I repeated those 4 words over and over, feeling so foolish. Thinking about it, I laughed, then cried. It's been so long since that night, but whenever I look back down that road, my eyes still get misty. So, I bid farewell to the past, and I said goodbye to Sam. Once I joined the set, I became busy. Oscar Fu was a perfectionist. For every scene, he would relentlessly focus on every detail, never stopping until he was 100% satisfied. Everyone on the set was on edge, not daring to slack off in the slightest. I remember when I first joined the set, a group of young actors, thrilled to have Oscar Fu's attention, were a bit smug. But after just 2 or 3 months, each of them seemed like they'd been thrown into military training. They weren't just standing firm. They stood as straight as soldiers. It had been a while since I last filmed, and I wasn't used to it at first. But Oscar Fu was especially good at guiding actors. He was strict and demanding, yet he never spoke harshly, patiently leading us along. So, although he pushed every actor to become a steel warrior, no one complained. Even when Ms. Kim came to visit the set and watched one of my scenes, she couldn't stop praising Oscar Fu. She joked, "You're really lucky. You've worked with so many directors and won awards. But I'm sure Oscar Fu is the best you'll ever have. Is it really that exaggerated? Of course, he's brought out the very best in your acting. Anne." She suddenly became somewhat suggestive. "I've noticed. You look absolutely breathtaking in his shots. You two don't look like it's your first time working together. It feels more like he's been watching you for a long time." I couldn't help but laugh. Oscar Fu is a great director. That's all. To avoid her going further with her teasing, I quickly added, besides, haven't I always been beautiful? Always beautiful indeed. As she was leaving, it seemed like she suddenly remembered something. Oh, by the way, I heard Julia tried to commit suicide. I was shocked. When did that happen? Not sure of the details. The news was suppressed, but I heard a bit of the rumor. Immediately, I thought of Sam. Julia trying to commit suicide was probably because of him. Probably his doing. MS. Kim also realized Julia was just too greedy and naive. Now she's facing the consequences. I sighed lightly. Is she all right? Just some childish drama. No real danger to her life. But she hesitated for a moment. But I understood. She's probably ruined her own path. MS. Kim nodded, not saying anything further. A rich young master spends his money for fun, and Julia took it seriously. Her threats and antics only hurt herself. No one would let a woman tarnish the reputation of the second-generation heir to the capital circle. Sam's affection and love. It was both a blessing and a curse. Chapter 18. During the break in the last scene, I scrolled through my phone and saw Julia trending. Her agency had issued a statement, announcing that, effective immediately, Julia's performances would be suspended. The news that Julia had been shelved quickly took the #1 spot on the trending list. It wasn't because of her popularity, but because someone had connected the dots and uncovered her mysterious, influential boyfriend. Sam and Julia hadn't been seen together much, with the charity auction being their first public appearance. At the time, the media refrained from reporting due to Sam's status, which is why it had only now been uncovered by the incredibly thorough public. The story of the second-generation heir and a female celebrity, mixed with the whispers of the elite circle, was something the public loved to consume. Rumors surfaced that Julia had been shelved because she had angered a powerful figure. Following this trail, people quickly pieced it together. With such a powerful boyfriend, how could Julia possibly have been shelved? The only possible answer, Julia had angered Sam. The gossipers were on fire, creating a story of a young heir falling out of love and turning vengeful. I was somewhat uninterested, just as someone came over to remind me, Olivia, it's starting. The last scene was just as intense as before, with Oscar Fu not showing any signs of easing up. We didn't finish until late in the evening. Just as I picked up my phone, MS. Kim called. Olivia, the old gossip with Sam is trending. I was stunned. Was the gossip now turning against me? You should check it out. They can't even suppress the trending topics. I took 3 minutes to read through it all. The story was simple enough. While the public believed Julia was shelved because of a love-turned-hate story with a rich young heir, someone came forward to counter that narrative. The truth is, Julia wasn't even a backup for the role, and this whole love-hate story is nonsense. This was met with skepticism, and many demanded proof. And then, the proof came. A short video. Well, it wasn't exactly the most appropriate video. It showed a quiet, empty street late at night. The streetlights dim and flickering. I was dressed up, holding my coat as I leaned forward, gazing at Sam, who was sitting sideways in his sports car. It looked like I was upset. Sam tilted his head back, casually smirking, his hand reaching into my coat and pulling me toward him, kissing me deeply. My heart started racing. I couldn't remember when this had happened, yet it had become undeniable evidence. The video was accompanied by a commentary from the person with inside knowledge. Childhood sweethearts, together for 7 years, broke up 2 years ago. With such solid evidence, it was impossible not to believe. The public, getting more excited by the minute, quickly shifted the focus of the gossip to me, and I was back on the trending list. The comments section went wild, and some even came up with a couple named for Sam and me, years like robbers. The fallen rich girl and her heir to the capital circle. A deeply tragic love story, straight out of a novel. The stand-in narrative is really disgusting. But the name years like robbers, the separation really does sting. Help. I think I might ship them. What do I do? I silently closed Instagram, staring at the streetlights, my thoughts drifting. In the past, my pride had kept me from publicly acknowledging this relationship. I remembered once when Sam got angry. Being with you always felt like an affair. How long are you planning to play this game? Yes. He used the word play. Maybe that was when he started to question my sincerity. He probably never thought that, in the end, our relationship would become so public, but it would happen only after we broke up. I gave a self-deprecating smile and tucked my thoughts away, preparing to head back. Turning around, I saw Oscar Fu standing under a tree. I wasn't sure how long he had been there, but his calm eyes were fixed on me. Heading back to the hotel? I nodded, walking alongside him toward the hotel. After more than 3 months of working together, Oscar Fu and I had only exchanged words related to the scenes. We rarely had personal interactions. He was a rather distant person, and I wasn't very talkative, so the walk was quiet, but it didn't feel awkward. As we reached the elevator, just before we parted ways, Oscar Fu suddenly asked, "Do you regret it?" I paused for a moment, surprised that he was interested in such gossip. After a moment of thought, I shook my head lightly. I don't know. Would I regret it? I had never really thought about it. Oscar Fu lowered his gaze, gave a slight nod, and left. Chapter 19. At the wrap party, Oscar Fu didn't show up. The male actor playing opposite me had worked with Oscar Fu on his first film. It seemed like he had drunk a bit too much and moved closer to me, whispering in my ear, "I'll tell you a secret." He looked around cautiously, as if ensuring no one was listening before he spoke. I chuckled at his antics. "What's the secret?" He leaned in, his voice low. "Director Fu has a crush on you." I shivered, and my drink spilled a little, dampening my clothes. Is it that surprising? I took a sip of my drink to calm my nerves. It's definitely a bit shocking. "You don't believe me?" His eyes were filled with a hint of melancholy, his voice slow. 3 years ago, I had a small role in Director Fu's first film. It lasted quite a while to film. Seeing that he seemed eager to talk, I didn't interrupt and quietly listened. "At that time, you were so popular. There were billboards of you everywhere, even one right under our hotel. There were many nights after work when I'd see Director Fu standing in front of your billboard, staring at your picture, lost in thought. The taste of alcohol lingered on my lips, and I felt like I was getting drunk. Otherwise, how could I hear his drunken rambling and feel a sense of melancholy?" I shook my head self-deprecatingly, thinking about all this nonsense. The champagne-stained part of my clothes was bothering me, so I got up to go to the dressing room to change and escape his constant chatter. After changing into clean clothes, I felt dizzy for a moment. I decided not to go out and instead sat on the couch in the dressing room to rest, half conscious. I heard footsteps approaching. I thought it was the assistant coming to get me, so I muttered weakly, "Nicole, I'm dizzy." I wanted to lay there a little longer to recover. A pair of hands gently pressed on my temples from behind, rubbing in slow circles. The touch was too familiar, and I immediately opened my eyes. In the dressing room mirror, I saw Sam's reflection. He had lost weight, his back still straight, but his demeanor seemed much more subdued. The confident, flamboyant attitude from before was gone, and there was a trace of melancholy in his eyes. I turned my head to avoid his touch. "What are you doing here?" Sam didn't answer the question. "I've taken care of everything. She'll never be in front of you again." I felt a mix of emotions and didn't respond. "Trust me, I never touched her." Sam's voice was dry. "I just missed you so much." She was there talking to me, and it felt like you were still by my side. The memory of our past arguments flashed in my mind. It always seemed like he thought that as long as he didn't cross a line with those girls, I would always accept him. How could I explain to him? It was never about Julia between us. In the past, I would get jealous and hurt because I loved him. I couldn't tolerate even the smallest grain of sand in my eyes, and that's why I would often end up in tears. Sam walked around and leaned down, placing his hands on the back of the couch, trapping me in his shadow. He was backlit, the shadows floating in his brows and eyes, his gaze carrying a deep melancholy. "Olivia, will you come back?" Chapter 20. The distance between us was so close. His unique, heated breath filled my senses. It felt both right in front of me and yet far away. If this had been before, I would have definitely been flustered, my face turning red. But now, I just quietly looked at him, not dodging, not responding. I even felt like smiling, not out of pride, but out of a profound sadness. My love had already ended, but he was just reaching the peak of his. Did you always think I would come back? I narrowed my eyes, looking into his. The light from outside the window flickered briefly, casting a faint glow in his eyes. He said, I never thought of being apart from you. From the very beginning. Until now. Sam seemed to have an obsession with fate. With such a deep bond between us, he had always been so confident, assuming I would never leave. But life is short and long. People come, people go, that is the norm. And yet, there was still some bitterness inside me. Why was it that? Because he was certain I wouldn't leave. He could treat me so lightly? A twinge of malicious revenge rose within me. I smiled and raised my hand. Sorry, you're too late. On my left ring finger, I wore a fake diamond ring. At the beginning of the rap party, the young actor who played the younger version of the male lead wouldn't stop clinging to me. He was reluctant to let go, tearfully trying to put a prop ring on my finger. Olivia, when I grow up, I'll marry you. Before leaving, he looked back 3 times, tears in his eyes, earnestly reminding me, you must wait for me, okay? I was deeply touched. I never imagined that my first proposal would come from a little kid. I don't even know why I did it, but I looked at the ring and didn't take it off. Sam stiffened, but quickly saw through my lie. It's fake, he said, taking my hand to remove the ring. I didn't resist, letting him do as he wished. The ring is indeed fake, but I don't want you anymore, that's real. I gave him back the words he had said 2 years ago. Although there was a gap between my hand and the ring, Sam's hand trembled, and several times, he couldn't get the ring off. He struggled to hold back, his lips tightly pressed together, his face pale. He stubbornly tried again and again to remove the ring from my finger. He succeeded in removing the ring, but it felt as though all his strength had been drained from him. He collapsed onto the sofa, tilting his head back against the backrest, covering his eyes with both hands. His voice was muffled and broken. Olivia, I want you. I only want you. Chapter 21. Sam had really changed. He had put away the laziness and arrogance of a young master, cutting ties with the flashy, indulgent lifestyle. I occasionally saw him in business news, and he had clearly become the image of a poised, composed gentleman with a calm and dignified appearance. The way he tried to make me happy, though, hadn't changed. He still went out of his way to please me, so carefully and thoughtfully that it almost made my heart ache. Sam, stop doing this, I sighed, though my tone was firm. He nodded dejectedly. All right. As he turned to leave, he couldn't help but look back. I'll wait for you. Always. I didn't dwell on how true or false his words were, simply taking it as another one of his jokes. Sam's obsession was so strong that even Diana couldn't help but speak up for him. He shed his arrogance, turned over a new leaf. You should really think about it. I just smiled and remained silent. Diana seemed to understand and let out a regretful sigh. Time passed slowly, and Just for Her was scheduled for release. The promotional efforts were in full swing, and I had shared a few scenes with Oscar Fu. The day the film was released also happened to be Oscar Fu's birthday. A group of people organized a celebration at his place, and Oscar Fu seemed to be in a good mood. So he agreed. With so many people, preparations didn't take much time, and everything necessary was in place. Someone brought out a cake and playfully urged Oscar Fu to make a wish. It seemed they were worried he'd be upset. As his assistant, who had been working with him for a long time, stepped in to stop them. Don't bother him. Director Fu never makes wishes. Just as the crowd was about to quiet down, Oscar Fu nodded slightly. All right. Immediately, the lights were turned off. The large room was filled with the flickering glow of candles, casting elongated shadows. Everyone quietly watched Oscar Fu, waiting for him to close his eyes and make a wish. At that moment, he turned his head toward me, his gaze focused. Olivia, Olivia's peace. May her wishes come true. Under the meaningful gaze of the crowd, I met Oscar Fu's eyes. For a moment, it felt as though I saw him standing in front of my billboard, his gaze directed toward me. It was subtle, yet it caused ripples in my heart. Oscar Fu turned his gaze away casually, and the others, understanding, didn't probe further into the slight ambiguity. After the cake was cut, everyone took their seats. It was clear that they had deliberately left the seat next to Oscar Fu for me. The dress I wore was short, and as I sat down, I felt uncomfortable, so I discreetly pressed my hand against the hem of my skirt. The surroundings were lively, voices rising and falling. Someone leaned in to talk to Oscar Fu, and he listened without looking away, while his hand subtly reached over and placed his jacket across my lap. In the midst of the bustling noise, I thought of Sam. That winter night, he had picked me up from the snow, angrily scolding me. "Olivia, are you sick?" I cried uncontrollably. "Sam, my dad doesn't want me anymore." The boy wrapped me in his coat, and I heard his chest heaving with every breath. "Olivia, I want you." At that moment, there was truly no sense of security, like a drowning person clinging to a piece of driftwood. "What if you're lying?" He looked down at me for a long time. Through my tear-filled eyes, I saw the clarity in his gaze, his seriousness. He said, "Then punish me. I'll lose you forever." I was a girl with a great memory, and I remembered every promise he made. "So, Sam, the punishment is, you'll lose me forever."